Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Julianne and I like to talk about books and how to read more of them and let some of them go off to new lives where they're not cluttering up my bookcase, because you guessed it, I have too many books. I would like to have some other stuff other than books on my bookcase, and it's a problem. So in this video I am going to do my monthly wrap up. I'm going to tell you all about the books that I read in September, how I had interesting results trying to follow my plans for the month, and then after that I'm going to tell you what I'm planning to do for October. Sort of. There's a secret project involved. Well, it's not so secret. There are some books over here which are involved in this project. But yeah, without any further ado, let's get on with the reviews. So, if you watched my September TBR video, you'll know that I planned to read some graphic novels and also some short books, plus Jade City by Fonda Lee. I can say that I have started Jade City by Fonda Lee today, which is the 3rd of October right now. Yeah, I didn't read it in September, but it stayed on the TBR, so hopefully I'll read that early this month along with the two short books, the two short books that are remaining on my TBR from last month. And one day I won't be playing catch up with my TBR plans all the time. So October actually started by me reading a different graphic novel, which wasn't one of the ones shown in that video, and that was The Impending Blindness of Billy Scott. Now, I fully intended to finish reading this in August. It was the last day of August, and I said to my partner, quick, recommend me a graphic novel, and he recommended the other three graphic novels that are in this pile and will be reviewed, and that were in my TBR list for the month. But then I had less time, so I was like, I need something quicker. My plans disrupted the whole idea of reading a book last minute. So he found me this, which was shorter, but I did finish it at a few minutes past midnight, and some people would still count that as September. However, I am a huge pedant. I am too honest. I like things to be accurate. So I actually finished this in the early hours of the 1st of September. So this graphic novel is about a young woman who is an aspiring artist, but hasn't really got on with things. And then after an accident, she learns that she is going blind. And so because of this, The Impending Blindness of Billy Scott, as in the title, she kind of sets out on a bit of a quest to find interesting people to draw. And so the book is basically a story of all the different people she meets, whilst kind of trying to just like live off of nothing, off of basically thin air. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. It's a very interesting, concept. It's a very high concept, but also quite down to earth. You know, she goes into some situations that I think are quite naturalistic. And yeah, I would really recommend this. I very much enjoyed it. Next up, I read Don't Tell Alfred by Nancy Mitford, which was one of the last two books on a pile for the Shopping My Shelves project, which there will be a video about out very, very soon. This is kind of the third in the series that was started with The Pursuit of Love, and continued with Love in a Cold Climate. This one, unlike the other two, actually focuses more on the narrator's own life. The previous ones are kind of more about cousin Linda. This one is basically her. She ends up in a kind of absurd situation where I think this is the 1950s by now. The previous two books were kind of set in the 30s, I think. So yeah, I think it's the 50s by now, and she discovers one day that her husband, who is like an Oxford don, like an academic at Oxford, has been given the position of ambassador to France. So they have to move to Paris, and then she has to take on the role of being the ambassadress. Meanwhile, her children are like completely creating havoc. The previous ambassadress, such a hard word to say, like completely unnatural. You don't say ambassadress, like, do you now anymore? I don't know. Anyway, the previous one refuses to leave the embassy. She's just decided she's going to stay, and keeps like holding court there, and all these people go to see her. It's really, really frustrating. And yeah, like And yeah, it's just sort of like situational comedy. I didn't like this as much as I liked the previous two books in the series. I have to say that although I quite liked the idea of getting to know a bit more of Fanny's personality, she kind of doesn't have like a very strong one, and neither does her husband Alfred. So it's just her like being surrounded by all these strong characters, and you kind of are constantly waiting to get to learn a little bit more about her and her personality, but she kind of is a very much a go with the flow type of person. So yeah, even the problems that arise, she doesn't wholly solve them herself. She gets other people to help her with them. And yeah, I don't know. On the one hand, it was interesting to see her kind of like subtly manipulate people. On the other hand, it was so subtle that you weren't sure that she even knew that she was doing what she was doing. And when she was aware of what she was trying to do, she was just so ineffectual. So yeah, mixed feelings, very mixed feelings. But overall, fun. You know, it wasn't that long a read. If you think this sounds fun to you, do check it out. Next up, I read Garden Spells, which is a sort of like, I guess, kind of twee, gentle, kind of like small town fantasy novel about a pair of sisters who are from this kind of small town where everybody knows who they are, and that they have these sort of like magical abilities to create like food that has the ability to influence people. Claire, the older sister, has been living in this town basically since they were children, and she's kind of running her catering business in this way. And then her younger sister Sydney kind of shows up, and Sydney ran away years ago basically and hasn't had anything more to do with the town, but she shows up with her daughter in tow, and she's just escaped an abusive relationship, and she is aiming to make peace with Claire and settle down in this town for good. And yeah, it's basically about the development of their relationship as sisters, but also getting to learn about the different people in the town and their relationship to each other. And yeah, it's really, really lovely. It feels a little bit dated because you'd feel like if someone was writing this kind of book now, they'd be a little more self-conscious about how kind of twee it is, for lack of a better term. But it's just lovely. It's lovely escapism, although I must say, content warning, descriptions of domestic abuse and violence and sexual assault in this are really quite harrowing. So if you think that you'll have a problem reading these things, maybe give this a miss, or bear in mind that when you get to pages that are going in that direction, you might want to skip a few, or give it to somebody else, and they can tell you when that bit's over. It only happens in a couple of places in the book, so I think quite easily avoided if you don't want to read that kind of thing. But yeah, just something to bear in mind if you are thinking of checking this out. I know this was a big hit when it came out in the mid-2000s because I saw it everywhere, and so it's one I've been wanting to get to for a while, so I'm really glad I read it. I really liked it. I'll definitely be reading more books by this author. Next up, I read The Devil Makes Free, which was the August Illumicrate book, and this was super spooky. Definitely got me into that dark academia mood, which was good timing because basically my entire autumn wardrobe is just a lot of kind of like gently goth stuff. You see right now I'm wearing this like kind of webby, lacy top thing over a purple vest, and I have this black hat on, and I don't wear a lot of black for most of the year, but this time of year I'm definitely all about it. So anyway, this inspired me. Not that people dressed in that way in this book. It's set at a school. There aren't really many clothing details in it. And there are only really two characters who appear in most of the book. There are some side characters, but you don't really get much description of them. So yeah, it's about a boy and a girl who accidentally release a devil into their school that basically wants to kind of like take over her body, it seems. And they do this because the boy Elliot is basically trying to find a cure for his mother's illness, like a magical cure, like a spell he can cast to save her. He's a kind of hereditary witch. He's been brought up to be able to do magic, but his mother's power is not strong enough to save herself, so he thinks he will do this. He will save her life. So he's at this school and he's going through all of their weird esoteric books, trying to find a spell that will give him the power that he requires. And in the process, they go down to the basement. He persuades the girl Tess to help him out. She kind of feels obliged to help him out after a whole awkward incident, and the fact that he's the headmaster's son and could get her kicked out of the school. And so they kind of go into this basement and they find this whole secret crypty bit, where Tess reads this book which unleashes this devil. And yeah, very bad things happen. The devil terrorizes Tess and then starts killing people, and they have to find a way to stop it. It's really fun. It's really gripping. It's not quite as murdery as I thought it was going to be, but when the murders happen, they're really, really gruesome. The results are just, ugh. So yeah, definitely a great one for the spooky time of year. The only thing I would say is that it was less like school focused than I thought it would be, like going into it, because it turns out it's actually set during the summer. I would be really interested how a book like this would work like during the school term with lots of people around. I think the characters had an advantage, right? They didn't get caught doing all of this stuff because there was almost nobody around. So yeah, this worked really well for this book. I definitely like to read a kind of dark academia book that is set during the ordinary school year with lots of people around. The next book I finished reading was the first of 2 graphic memoirs. This is Follow Me In by Catriona Chapman. This is basically a travelogue and also the story of a relationship breakdown, and tells us the story of the author's trip to Mexico. So it's really, 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 really beautiful. There's all these lovely, colourful illustrations, and I learned so much about Mexico from reading this. I didn't know very much about Mexico to begin with, but there's some history, as well as like touristy information, information about the pyramids and other interesting places that you might want to go. And at the same time, there's this sort of slow, very subtly, carefully done portrayal of her relationship with her boyfriend and how it's breaking down due to his alcoholism. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. I think it's definitely a great one to read if you like reading travel books and travel memoirs, especially obviously the graphic kind, which I know there are quite a few of. So yeah, if this appeals to you, I think definitely worth reading. I enjoyed it a lot. The second graphic memoir I finished last month was Spinning by Tilly Warden. This is a very interesting concept, because it's basically about the author's relationship with ice skating as a child and a teenager, and how she kept it up for many, many years and ultimately decided to give it up. And it was really interesting for me because I had various hobbies as a kid that I gave up. I had a lot that I also carried on with. And I related to some bits of this quite a lot, because there was just suddenly like one day where I decided I had enough of the hobby, and that's kind of what happens to her. But it's also about being a gay teenager and how she has to live with those feelings and deal with those feelings in secret, and then what happens after she comes out of the closet. And yeah, it was really, really interesting. What you won't get out of this is like a great insight into the world of ice skating or some big scandal. There are some bits of it, there are some things you learn about the ice skating world in this where you're like, whoa. Such as the fact that they're really competitive, and there's all these like tests that young ice skaters do, but then very, very rarely leads on to anything. It's kind of like just a thing that they do as kids. And it doesn't really go there for very many of them, because there's just so many, and not all of them are going to like reach Olympic standard or even performance standard. I just, I had no idea how many like North American ice skaters there were in the world. Like, this is just a completely bizarre idea to me. Like, in London, we only have like one like full-size ice rink as far as I'm aware. So yeah, like this was like going into a whole other kind of world that I was totally unfamiliar with, and that was really interesting too. And finally, I read Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which like everybody and their wife, has recommended to me at this point. My partner picked it out on the pile, and he had recommended it to me before, but I've also heard and read recommendations and seen recommendations from so many other people. This is a really, really interesting concept. So it's about a girl whose girlfriend, Laura Dean, keeps breaking up with her, often by cheating on her. Yet she continues with this relationship. She's convinced that they are in love, and yeah, she doesn't know how to deal with the fact that she keeps getting broken up with, that her girlfriend keeps cheating on her, and she writes into an agony aunt. She goes to see like a kind of local psychic to get advice. But meanwhile, things start happening in her life and with her other friendships that make her realise that if Laura Dean keeps breaking up with her and then they get back together, maybe she'll have to be the one to break it off for good. The art is beautiful, the characters are really interesting, and I just loved the fact that it talked about letting go of a relationship that is working in some ways and isn't working in others, that strength of feeling isn't enough to keep a relationship going, that you have to kind of want the same things and be in the same headspace. And yeah, that was something I'd not seen explored like this before, and that was really, really brilliant. So there we go. That was my review wrap up for September 2021. I will now be moving on to spooky books once I've read those remaining 2 short books and the rest of Jade City. Yeah, I've got a lot to read, so yeah, I better go get on with it. Thank you very much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you'd like to see more from me. If you would like to read more books but don't know where to start, I have a free course that can help you out with that. Check it out in the description box below. And I also wrote a novella and published it last year. It's been over a year now. Absolutely bizarre thinking about it. And it's called Unlocking Lockdown, and follows 2 women who don't get along, who have been reluctant flatmates, but when they are forced to stay inside together during the first lockdown of the COVID-19 pandemic in the UK, they realise that maybe they can get on after all that. Thank you again. You'll see me again soon. Bye!